She never spoke. For 3 years, Thorn Harla served targets on military training ground, deliberately blending into background as elite fighters honed their skills. Her skills. She was hardly noticed until the day when a taunt from one of Navy SEALs had gone too far. When Lieutenant Breyer silently handed her his sniper rifle, no one expected what would happen next. The incredible shot hit the target at a distance of 2,100 m. It didn't just hit. Goal. He destroyed all ideas about the modest woman that everyone had long ignored. What city are you watching this video from today? If you like this story and want more content like this, please subscribe. Your support helps us continue to tell powerful stories like these. Stories. The morning light cuts through the Nevada desert like a blade, revealing military training facilities in harsh light. Training Ground 7 is isolated from the main base. It's a harsh stretch of earth where the elite prove their worth. With the sunrise, the sun is shining. An old pickup truck is climbing up to the checkpoint. The engine stalls after the final spurt. Thorn Harla gets out of the car with precise precision. She is 36. She is thin, with callous hands. Her cap is pulled down, low above the attentive eyes. The guard barely pays attention to her, nodding briefly. "Good morning. Miss Harla," he says, not looking up from his tablet. Thorn barely notices. Nods. Words are currency she rarely spends. She does her morning. Tasks with mechanical precision. Checks guidance systems. Calibrates equipment. Eliminates minor deviations that are not noticeable to others. When she adjusts a mechanism on a distant target, her hands acting with amazing confidence. Correction of 1.3 degrees without measurements. An imperceptible detail, but it can change the accuracy of a shot by millimeters at long range. Early morning, her favorite time. No questions, no looks, just the silence of the desert and work. As Commander Riker approaches with a tablet, Thorn changes his position, slouches, lowers her gaze. Her movements become deliberately uncertain. This is not fear as a disguise. "Is the system okay?" asks Riker, businesslike and detached. Thorn nods silently, pointing to the checklist on the workbench. "Okay, today is the qualification for the 8th team. High priority." Nods again and dissolves into background noise. When the operators begin to stay, they go around her like water around a stone. Conversations, laughter, activity that does not concern it. It becomes part of the infrastructure of Not, more visible than the targets themselves. Only Lieutenant Breyer watches her with quiet interest. As the helicopter approaches, Thorn tenses imperceptibly. Only a very careful observer would notice this reaction. Breyer notes, and puts it into the piggy bank of observations of the most mysterious employee of the landfill. By midday, the range is buzzing with activity. Shooters line up at various distances. Shots are fired in controlled bursts. Thorn moves between stations, invisible to everyone except the equipment. She notices a drive on one of the targets, 2, and on target 6. She writes it down on piece of paper and leaves on the Riker's table, disappearing again. During lunch, when the rest take cover in the shadows, Thorn works alone, in the hot haze of the desert. She unerringly finds and fixes a problem that could throw off the calibration in the afternoon. No one doesn't notice, no one thanks. And judging by how her shoulders left alone, that's exactly how she likes it. A week goes by. The regime is unchanged. Thorn comes before dawn, leaves last. She is a shadow, a ghost, unnoticed but necessary. Until one day, everything changes. Nonsense, mutters Warrant Officer Keith Vasek, adjusting his sights for the 3rd time. Equipment, something is wrong. Polygon 7 is full of tension. Joint, training, candidates for selection in the SEAL and veterans. And everyone feels the pressure, including because of the visit of a high-ranking officer. Vasek, a confident 35-year-old. The shooter misses again. His irritation is transmitted to those around him. "You're factoring in the wrong wind," Lieutenant Breyer quietly remarks. So, snaps in the OSCK. This equipment, as if on a call, with a toolbox, goes to the guidance system. Eyes on the ground, cap, low. The movements are economical, polished, and imperceptible. Vasek looks at her with irritation. His failures find a convenient target. Perhaps if the girl. Targets were not in the clouds. Everything will work fine. Several young. The fighters laugh awkwardly. Thorne doesn't react. Crouches down at the computer. Fingers confidently run over the keys. Hey, I'm talking to you. Vasek shouts. That she's too smart or too dumb to answer. The laughter dies down. The commander. Riker looks up sharply but doesn't intervene. The tension thickens. Thorne remains silent. Her hands are confident despite the humiliation. Her face is not, expresses nothing. A mask honed by years of deliberate invisibility. It's unbelievable, he continues louder. That's why women have no place in the military. Bases. They can't even cope with simple equipment. The voltage is back. Changes. Something flashes across Thorne's face. A momentary crack in her carefully constructed mask. It disappears almost immediately, but Lieutenant Breyer notices it. His gaze narrows. For a split second, he sees what's hidden beneath the mask. Something hard, dangerous, and carefully contained. Thorne ends up working with. Guidance system makes a small adjustment that Vasek missed. Ignoring the barrage of insults, she gathers her tools and leaves, again, becoming invisible. But something has changed. The fructose equilibrium of the polygon. 7 breached. 2 days later, the situation escalates. Joint exercises continue now with an emphasis on long-range shooting. The targets are 2,100 m away, shaking, in Mariv over the scorching desert. It's a tough shot even under ideal conditions. And today, variable winds and high-ranking officials are a task, almost impossible. Wind east 10 knots, says Commander Riker, looking into powerful binoculars. The line of shooters makes adjustments. Rifles crackle in turn. Results different, but no one has yet made a perfect hit in the center. Vasek, that's all. Still irritated by his previous failures. He becomes angrier with each shot. Thorne works quietly at the edge of the range, fixing a target that had jammed earlier in the morning. Deliberately keeps away from the main line of fire and from Vasek, through the protective. Headphones, the shots seem distant, almost sleepy. When she finishes work and goes to the station, Vasek's voice is carried throughout the training ground. Even the girl, better at shooting targets than some of you newbies. A derisive laugh follows. Thorne looks at the ground. Her path is carefully calculated to avoid the crowd. But the unexpected happens. Lieutenant Breyer breaks ranks and goes to her. His movements are measured, unhurried. The laughter dies down. Everyone looks, without saying a word. Words. He hands her his bone rifle. Macmillan TAC 338. There's absolute silence. Torm looks at the weapon. A look of fear runs across her face. Something deep, painful. Time to decide. What are you doing, Breyer? Asks Vasek. But there is already uncertainty in his voice. Thorne does not. Moves. Does not breathe. Her gaze is fixed on the rifle. Emotions play on her face, which usually remains neutral. For the first time in 3 years at the testing ground, they're actually looking at her, seeing her, and this clearly makes her uncomfortable. Then, exhaling slowly, she takes the rifle. The transformation is subtle, but full. The back straightens, the shoulders straighten, the chin rises. She holds the weapon with confident familiarity, checks the cartridge, adjusts the butt. Her gaze becomes focused, penetrating. Without words, she goes to the position for shooting. The operators watch in silence as she lies down in position. Lying down, he performs the entire pre-shooting routine with precision. His breathing is even. Calculations are precise, without any devices. Not a shadow of a doubt. Every movement speaks of thousands of hours behind the rifle. It shoots. The target is at 2,100 m. shows a perfect hit in the center. The red flag rises. Without joy, without the slightest change in expression, she reloads her rifle and fires again. Another perfect hit. The range is completely silent. Commander Riker takes a step forward, studying her with a new gaze. Recognition dawns on his face. In Harla, he says Typhus. Thorn Harla. The name obviously means something to the senior officers. Young SEALs look at each other, not understanding where the sudden change in the atmosphere came from. Breyer turns to them. 5 confirmed hits in a row since 2.300. M in the Carino Valley under heavy fire. The mission is classified. The record is not broken. Vasek's face turns pale. It dawns on him. Who is he making fun of all the time? These days? Thorn stands up, hands a rifle back to Breyer with a slight nod, and heads to her car. A stunned silence follows her around the training ground. No one stops her. But every eye is fixed on her. For the first time, she is really seen. When she approaches the car, Lieutenant Breyer appears next to her. Why? Simply, he asks. Thorn looks him straight in the eye for the first time. Her voice is rough with long silence, but clear and confident. Some ghosts prefer. Stay buried, Lieutenant. She gets into the pickup and drives away, leaving behind a silent testing ground. But everything changed forever. The Invisible Woman was noticed, and neither she nor those who saw it would ever be the same again. She arrived for morning service earlier than everyone else, as always, but Angara already. Commander Riker's car was parked, disrupting its well-established routine. Harla, he said. He, when she approached. His voice was neutral, his gaze appraising. Got a minute. She nodded once and followed him inside. The office was ascetic and utilitarian, like everything else at the Site 7. After, I made a couple calls yesterday. Riker began, watching her closely. What I suspected was confirmed. You served in Marine Corps Intelligence. Then, transferred to the classified JC unit. Distinguished yourself in Afghanistan. Several awards. Thorn's expression didn't change. She didn't give out any emotions. And then something happened in the Karangal Valley. The operation is broken. Arrow, the details are classified above my clearance level, but the implications are obvious. You was discharged with honor. A psychological examination recommended civil. Adaptation. That's the question, sir, Thorn asked, her voice hoarse from along. Silence. Why are you here, Harla? With your skills, you could do much more than fixing targets. She met his gaze. I like to fix things, sir. It's just straightforward. Unlike taking a life. Her face twitched slightly. Yes, sir, unlike of this. Riker nodded, understanding the boundaries. Today, the qualifying. Shooting. Your presence would be useful. I have a maintenance schedule. It can wait. It wasn't exactly an order, but it was close. Your knowledge can be useful to these operators. Many of them have never worked with someone of your level. Thorn hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. Finally, she nodded reluctantly. 9 o'clock. Main firing line. Outside, the Nevada sun was rising higher and higher, promising another scorching day. Thorn methodically walked. Morning checklist. Try to ignore the curious glances of those arriving. By 9 o'clock in the morning, an impressive group gathered at the firing line, including strangers, faces. Among them was an officer with general stars, standing next to Riker. Vasek was the last to arrive. His face was tense, reserved. He walked around the Thorn. Sighed. The memories of yesterday's disgrace were too fresh. Gentlemen, Riker began. Today we'll focus on shooting at extreme ranges. Before we begin, I would like to introduce a special consultant. She will observe and give feedback. Ms. Thorn Harla. All eyes turned to her. Thorn stood tense, awkward under the attention, the weight of other people's expectations. Pressed her. Ms. Harla has extensive experience in early detection and destroying targets. Riker continued, deliberately avoiding the details of her past. She will evaluate the technique and offer recommendations. The training session began with standard qualifying exercises. Thorne watched silently as each shooter took up a position, made calculations, and fired at increasingly distant targets. She noticed patterns, tendencies, strengths, and weaknesses of each, but kept observation to herself until Riker himself addressed her. Lieutenant Breyer performed confidently. His hits were consistently accurate. When he finished, approached her. There's a remark. She studied him for a few seconds. You anticipate the recoil. You tense up before the descent at maximum distance. This moves the shot to the right by 2 inches. Breyer nodded. I've been trying this for a month now. Fix. No one noticed. Most people won't notice, she replied. Just with, as the day progressed, Thorne became more involved in the process. Her technical comments were accurate and deep, demonstrating mastery of ballistics and marksmanship. Initially skeptical operators began to contact her themselves. Professionalism cannot be hidden. All but Vasika. He stood aside, hurt. During a short break, a general approached Thorne. The name on his stripe was Harrison. He had clearly spent decades in command. Amazing shooting yesterday, Miss Harla, he said calmly. Lieutenant, Breyer said, to hit 100M shots in a row is impressive under any circumstances. Circumstances. Thank you, sir, she replied neutrally. Reminds me of the reports on the operation. In Karangao, 5 confirmed hits at 2,300M under fire. Name. The arrow was classified. He looked into her eyes. Thorn on the eye. This information is still classified, sir. Of course. But the skills that made that mission possible, obvious. He lowered his voice. These skills could still serve the cause. Harla, the right cause. Before she could answer, the general was distracted. Thorne remained in place. Memories that she had buried for 3 years began to rise to the surface. The weight of what she had done, of who she was, pressed on her chest, as if, physically, after lunch, training began on moving targets at long distances. One of the most complex aspects. The operators became increasingly frustrated. Vasek tried to rehabilitate himself, shot again and again outside his own opportunities and failed. This is nonsense, he muttered after another. Miss, there was something wrong with the wind calculations. Torm, who was standing nearby, said, without thinking, it's not the wind. Your breathing is uneven. Vasek turned sharply. I didn't ask for your opinion. No, but you need it. Words began to come easier to her, as if her muscle memory had been activated completely, of a different kind. The target doesn't care about your ego, Torm replied calmly. Their exchange attracted attention. The operator stopped training, feeling the growing tension. You think you're the best here just because you got lucky yesterday, SEK said through his teeth with a dangerous intonation. 1 shot doesn't make you an expert. 2 shots, corrected Lieutenant Breyer. Perfect hit in the center at 2,100 meters. Vasek ignored him. If you're so cool, show me again. Show me, as it should be. Thorne looked at him coldly. I'm not here to compete. No, you're here to hide, Vasek insisted, sensing. Vulnerability 3 years you fix targets because you're afraid to click again. Trigger. What happened, Harla? Where are you running from? The words hit home, breaking through the cracks in her protective armor. Everyone around froze. What was happening was becoming too personal, too painful. Enough, Warrant Officer. Commander Riker intervened. But it was already late. Thorne's face closed in. All she had accomplished that day was destroyed. Without saying a word, she turned and walked toward the far section, range where the targets needed repair. Lieutenant Breyer found it through. As she methodically replaced the damaged targets. He began silently. Help, respecting her silence. Finally he said, Vasek went too far. But he did not. I was wrong, Thorne answered quietly. About you hiding. She nodded. We all carry. We take a toll on what we do, Breyer said carefully. Especially in our work. Shots, decisions, they stay with us. Some have more, some less. Kerengau. Thorne's hand stopped. Classified. Result, no. The mission was a success thanks to your shots. People were saved and killed, she said softly. Breyer fell silent. It's part of the job. The burden we accept. I couldn't bear it anymore. Thorne looked at him, straight in the eyes. 5 shots. 5 confirmed hits. All children. Breyer's expression remained neutral, but his eyes betrayed shock. Children, child soldiers. 14 to 15 years old. Armed and dangerous. Yes, they were preparing. Ambush the Marines. Yes, her voice was firm, but her hands were shaking. Everything. True. Everything was justified, but they were still children. Understanding lit up the face. Brera, so you're gone. Dismissal with honor. Psychological examination. Admitted that I was unfit for service. Bitter smile. They were right. And you came here where I could fix targets instead of hitting them, where no one would know. What did I do? Where could I have disappeared to before yesterday? She nodded. They were silent. Worked for a few more minutes. The confession hung between them, heavy, but not condemning. As the sun sank to the west, casting long shadows across Polygon 7, Breyer spoke again. You know, those Marines went back to their families, thanks to you. I know, she answered quietly, but it doesn't make it any easier, and it shouldn't become. If it were easy, we wouldn't be who we're supposed to be. He looked at her carefully. The fact that it still gnaws at you after so much time proves you the one who was needed. Thorne does not. She answered, but something in her face changed. A microscopic crack in armor. As they were returning to the base, a noise caught their attention. One of the young operators quarreled with a piss at the Angara. The dispute flared up. This could end badly, Breyer muttered, quickening his pace. They were just at that moment when Vosek sarcastically said, You will never get into the situation in your life. Targets, new B, 20,500 M, variable wind. I can do it, insisted the young operator. I trained for this. Training is not action, he snapped. Vosek, prove in practice. The young man grabbed the rifle, ready to prove it. Thorne watched with growing alarm. She recognized a dangerous mixture. Pride, inexperience, and pressure from others. He's not ready for this shot, she said to Breyer. The technique is good, but the wind estimate is unstable. He misses, and Vosek won't let him forget it. The situation quickly turned into something that could undermine the group's cohesion and break the young gunman. Thorne wavered, torn between a desire to remain in the shadows and the need to intervene. Again, the moment of choice. Deeply, she took a breath and stepped forward. Before you shoot, there's a technique. That is worth knowing. Everyone turned to her. Even Vosek narrowed his eyes for wind corrections at long distances. She continued. There is a method, calculations that are not taught in standard training. This will help me do this. A shot? The newcomer asked uncertainly. Maybe, she answered honestly, but the main thing is that it will help you with each next shot. For the first time in 3 years, Thorne Harler herself came into the light, shared the knowledge that she had hidden, along with the past. As she explained the complex calculations for shooting at extreme distances, around her, the operators gathered, even those who had recently ignored her. Even Vosek listened. Professional curiosity overcame pride. At that moment, something inside Thorne had changed. Time hadn't disappeared, but perhaps there was a way. Balance it with something good, something that saves lives rather than takes them. In the following days, changes began to occur at the SEM training ground. Thorne Harla, she still arrived before dawn, still meticulously served the targets, but no longer disappeared into the background. When operators asked about long-range shooting, she replied. Her skill now flowed freely day after day, Commander Riker watched these changes with silent approval. When Thorne approached one of the operators, whom she had helped earlier, she was just setting up the guidance system. I spoke with General Harrison. He began without preamble. He was impressed by the fact that, saw yesterday, Thorne continued to work, fine-tuning the sensor. I just showed the calculation method. You did more. You established contact. Use her experiences to help others become better. Riker leaned on the equipment table. Harrison wants to secure your role. Official shooting consultant in addition to your primary duties, if you wish. Hands Thorne on. Froze for a moment. I'm not sure I want to. Think about it, Riker said. The decision is up to you. No pressure. When he left, Thorne realized how different it felt compared to the military orders that had governed her previous life. Free choice, waiting, but without the burden of command. Unfamiliar territory. Later that morning, Lieutenant Breyer approached her as she was changing her faceplate. Targets. I heard about Riker's offer, he said, helping her. Secure a new target. What do you think? Still thinking about it, she admitted. I'm not sure I'm ready to be in the spotlight again. Breyer nodded, understanding. The team is discussing what you showed yesterday. Even Vosek admitted that. The calculation method was new to him. High praise, she dryly remarked. From him. Definitely. He handed her a screwdriver. You know, between total invisibility and stage under the spotlight, there's a middle. You can find that balance here. Thorne thought about it while they silently finished the repairs. The thought of a compromise seemed attractive. To use skills without returning to the role that cost her so much. At noon, she was surprised to see him approaching her. Vosek, the expression is wary, but not hostile. Harla, he said, tensely, I have a minute. She nodded, wiping her hands. The method of calculating that you yesterday showed, it is reliable. Reduce my scattering by 30% at the limit. Distance. Words came to him with difficulty. Where did you learn this? I developed myself, she replied. On assignments. Standard formulas did not take into account everything. Variables at long distances. Vasek's eyebrows rose slightly. You yourself. Developed. When your life depends on the accuracy of your shot, you start. Improvise. He nodded slowly. Professional respect gradually overcame personal. Pride. I have training today. Hostage scenario. If you're not busy, maybe you could watch. Give me some advice. The invitation came to him. Not easy. A concession from a person who is not used to admitting that someone can. No more. Torm realized it was a conciliatory gesture. I'll come, she said simply. Something has changed between them. Not friendship yet, but respect. The first step. The training was beneficial for everyone. Thorne first just watched, then began sharing technical tips. Her comments were precise, practical, born of combat experience. Vosek, to his credit, accepted her recommendations without argument. His shots became more consistent. When the session ended, he approached her again. Your knowledge is wasted on the targets, he said. Straight. You should teach it formally. Perhaps, she replied, still pondering. Thorne became more involved in the training each day. Operators shared knowledge of portions in volumes that are comfortable for them. Emotionally, she still kept her distance and didn't talk about the past. But doors, point of control, began to appear on the walls she had built. Connections. A week after her first speech, General Harrison again arrived at Polygon 7. He watched as Thorne worked with a group of snipers, making minor adjustments that noticeably improved accuracy. She has a natural gift. Mentor. Harrison commented to Riker. Strict, but not authoritarian. Technically correct, but understandable. Yes, sir, Riker agreed. She became. Different person these past 2 weeks. Not different, Harrison corrected. More. She integrates parts of herself that she had previously hidden. After the training, the general approached Torm. Let's take a walk, Harla. They moved away from the firing line to distant targets. shimmering in the heat. "I've studied your file," Harrison began. "Complete, including classified sections on the Operation Broken Arrow." Thorne tensed up but kept going. 5 shots, Fi confirmed, neutralizing armed opponents who were preparing to ambush the Marines. He continued, 23 sleeping American lives. "They were children," she said quietly. They were armed militants," Harrison countered, "deliberately placed. The Taliban, who knew we would hesitate. They knew how it would hit whoever. Pull the trigger. And knowing that makes it easier, sir. No, and it shouldn't be. Easier, but it has to be understood in context." Harrison stopped and looked into her eyes. "The fact that you're still having a hard time speaks volumes about your character, Harla. Not everyone can carry this burden. Some are too good at it, to separate from feelings. That's when mistakes happen." Thorne met him. "Look, yours sincerely, sir, I couldn't detach myself enough, so I left. You left because you needed distance. Time to realize that is not the same as running away." He gestured toward the cameraman in the distance. "What you do it here. Share your experience. This is a way to pay tribute to the hard work, decisions, help others make the right choice when their time comes." Q. The word struck a deep chord in her. A new look, a perspective, that she hadn't thought of before. Every technique she shared. The amended motion. The amendment you proposed, Harrison said, could be the difference between a hit and a miss, between lives saved and wasted losses. "Consider Riker's offer," he added, "not because we need in you, although it is true, but because you yourself need it. It is a way. Turn what haunts you into something constructive." Harrison left, and Thorne stood among the distant targets, thinking about his words. The Nevada sun beat down on her, harsh and clear as she weighed options that now seemed less black and white. As earlier in the evening, when most had already left the 7th test site, Thorne was still there, slowly, walking through the equipment hangar. These tools and components were hers, a refuge for 3 years, a world simple and understandable, devoid of the complexities of the former. Life, she was lost in thought. A voice came from behind her. She turned around and saw Lieutenant Breyer in the doorway. "Considering my options," she replied. "Oh." Still weighing. Breyer nodded, understanding. "I'm going to the auxiliary testing ground. We'd like to shoot a little before dark. Would you like to join us?" The invitation was casual, without pressure. Perhaps that is why she agreed. They walked in silence. That required no words. Breyer set up targets at different distances and handed her the rifle. Ladies first. Thorne took the weapon. The familiar weight lay comfortably on the shoulder. This time there was no audience, no need to prove anything. Just pure mechanics of the shot. She breathed, counted, pulled the trigger. Shot. Hit the target in the center. "Still in shape," commented Breyer, and stood up into position. They fired in turns until the sun disappeared below the horizon, casting long shadows. The simplicity of the process, the concentration created. A space where conversations arose naturally. "When did you realize that you wanted to become a sniper?" Breyer asked between shots. "On the day of qualification end. Developed. Then everything came together for the first time. Calculations, breathing, aiming ideal. Coincidence. Family tradition. Father was in intelligence. Grandfather was a sniper in Vietnam. Nobody forced me, but the stories, discipline, and precision drew me in. When it got dark, they packed up their equipment. Common practice created a bond between them. Warm, calm connection. Same time tomorrow." Breyer asked. Thorne nodded, surprised at how much he wanted to say. "Yes, I'll be here." The next morning, Thorne came to the training ground with a decision made. She found Riker in his office, reviewing the qualification results. "Sir," she said from the doorway, "about the consultant position." Riker looked at her expectantly. "I agree," she said, "but with conditions. Listen, I keep my regular duties. Consulting is additional, and I I want to focus on technique and calculations without psychology and tactics. Riker nodded. That makes sense. Anything else? Torm considered. I want to develop a complete training course on long-range shooting, standardized methods that I developed. A smile crossed Riker's face. Considered approved. When will you start? It's already started, she replied. Over the next few weeks at the SM training ground. A new rhythm had been established. Thorne continued to service the equipment as usual. Accuracy, but now also conducted training for snipers. Her program quickly gained a reputation and attracted operators from other divisions. To the surprise of many, Vasek became one of its main supporters. He implemented methods into his training and referred fighters to her for special consultations. Their professional relationship began to resemble mutual respect and the former. The conflict was a thing of the past. A month after the decisive shot, Thorne watched for the qualification of new snipers. One of them could not cope with the calculations on wind and grew more and more angry after each miss. May I? She asked, approaching. The boy nodded willingly. Thorne's reputation was known to him. She sat down next to him and adjusted his position a little. Do you think the wind is in its position, but you don't take into account its changes further along the trajectory? This distance requires taking into account the terrain features. She explained. Each parameter, the operator's next shot was much closer to center, better, she noted. When the session ended, General Harrison, have you found your place, Harla? He said. Just part. Him, sir, she corrected. I'm still looking for balance. Aren't we all? Harrison smiled slightly. The load does not disappear, but becomes lighter if it is divided, if turned into something useful. Thorne nodded, acknowledging the truth in his words. The Bongala would stay with her forever, but now she was balanced by something constructive, a way to help others make good decisions in impossible moments. When the sun set, over the 7th training ground, Thorne again walked between the targets she was servicing. 3 years. It used to be her refuge, a way to hide from herself and her past. Now they had become something else, a bridge between her past and future. Lieutenant Breyer approached her, carrying 2 cups of coffee. A penny for thoughts. Just admiring the view, she said, taking the cup. The view is the same, he noted. The perspective is different. She nodded, taking a sip. I tried to become here invisible, and now I'm learning to be visible on my own terms. Next morning, Thorne Harla arrived at range 7 before dawn. As always, the gate guard greeted her by name. She performed maintenance on the previous. Thoroughness. When the operators began to arrive, she greeted them with a quiet confidence. Some things hadn't changed. She still preferred actions to words, still valued precision, and still carried the burden of her past. But now, moving to a familiar landscape of Polygon 7, it was something new. The woman who was once a ghost, present but invisible, now cast a shadow.